guess the business strategic component is something of interest of ours as well. But everything that's been hosted in this actual series is certainly something that the Foundation's been very keen to support, and it's really important to see these types of things supporting the tourism industry, especially with COVID. So thank you everybody for participating. The Foundation, just today, we announced another particular training opportunity that might be of interest as well. So I'll share the link out through the comment section for that. But it's around supporting everybody within the Office 365 space. So there'll be some training for beginners as well as intermediate, and opportunities for advanced with a Microsoft Gold accredited partner across Queensland and New South Wales. So I will share that comment in here, but I love the idea, Chrissy, about continuing some form of a touch base once a month. So I think that'll be excellent for the event coordinators in this sphere, especially given the changes coming up and the environment we're in. So, yeah, so the Foundation, we've just got a funding round that closed Friday week, and we're looking forward to announcing before the end of this financial year the outcomes. This particular program is part of our BIG Futures Fund, which is specific for COVID relief. And we've still got those open, so we'll still be keeping it open until the end of June. And then our committee will be revisiting to see what happens post and what support the industries need in this space. So that's a bit of a wrap for me, and yeah, all the best and looking forward to today.
Fabulous. Thanks so much, Kirsty. And I think the other thing is that because we're all not from the same spot, you know, we've got people from Central Highlands, Isaac, Whitsunday, Mackay region, that, you know, Zoom, the whole Zoom idea is a fantastic idea because we can sort of all get together without actually having to physically go anywhere, which doesn't mean that we're not going to physically go somewhere when each other's events are on. It's very important that we go visit each other's events. But all right, well, we might get started. So thank you, Kirsty, from that's Local Buying Foundation Kirsty's from, and you know, we've been thanking them so much for their funding. It was through the BIG Fund, Futures Fund. That's been wonderful. And Mackay Regional Council, always very supportive of Mackay Tourism, and Mackay Tourism for supporting all you. I suppose we best thank them as well. All right, so I would like to begin by respectfully acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land on which we meet today, the Ubera and the Yabara people. I pay my respects to elders past and present, and to the young emerging leaders. I would also like to extend my acknowledgement to all Aboriginal members of the Bira Gubba Nation. Okay, Krista, for the last time, take it away. This will be a great one. Thank you.
Good day, everyone, and good morning. Thank you so much for joining us. Today, we're going to be touching on the 3-step business plan. What I might ask you to do while we're doing the presentation side of this morning, if you'd like to make sure you're on mute, and also you can leave your videos on or you can turn them off. For those of you who haven't been before, what we do is about an hour of the actual presentation and learning, and then we open up to the floor. So if you do have questions throughout, we'd love you to go on what's called the chat. So if you haven't used Zoom a lot, just have a look for a thing called chat, and you can type in questions. They can be private or to the whole group, and any examples you'd love to share would be great. So what we'll be covering today is looking at an overarching business plan, particularly for events. And what I want you to walk away with today is what I call a one-page strategic direction for your business plan. And if you can, even get your business plan down to 1 page. Okay, we have had a huge series of 6 workshops, and today is our lucky last. So just celebrating there with the Mackay region, and thanks to Mackay Tourism, Mackay Regional Council, and of course, the Local Buying Foundation. Without those people supporting us, we wouldn't be able to bring this to you today. So I guess I just wanted to start off with why do we all need a business plan? And many of us have different reasons for having a business plan. I'll be really honest with you. The only reason I first wrote a business plan was I was writing a grant application to try and get some more money for an event we were working on. and the application said, oh, please attach your business plan. And we were like, oh, okay, I'll quickly write one. The issue, I guess, for writing a business plan when you're doing it in a rush or just writing it by yourself is that many of the people in my committee and the organising group of the event didn't really have much buy-in to it. So I want to run through some of that. For those of you who I haven't told this story, sorry if you've heard it before, but the other reason for writing a business plan was back in one of the first events I ever worked with back in the early 90s at the Australian Italian Festival in Ingham. We were all volunteers. We were trying to get this event running. We even gave ourselves 2 years to organise it. But at the end of it, it was a 10-day event. We sold over 16,000 tickets in a shire that only had 10,000 people at the time. It was highly successful from a publicity point of view. We had national profiling, lots of people attending the event, but we were faced with major rainfall, almost flooding. And I think the reason that I've really learnt to do business planning and a bit of risk management was I wish we'd been really on top of it. We lost over $200,000 at that first event. And it wasn't by any one person's overspending. It was just that we hadn't allocated enough funds for the unknown. And we really hadn't put together a business plan that helped us, I guess, clearly identify what we needed. So I'm hoping that none of you ever have to face that. We were able to raise the funds and the event still exists today, but it's just really highlighted to me some of the things that can go wrong with an event. With an event, it really taught us about crisis management, having real weather contingencies, final commitments, and understanding that non-profit doesn't mean no profit. This is a really important thing to do. So when I cover financial strategies today for your business plan, just keep that in mind. The other thing many of us experience with our events is what I call burnout. So that post-event burnout, where you see many people throw up their arms, they quit, they throw the hat in, and a lot of it's got to do with the lack of succession planning or really not understanding human resourcing. And that's something often in a business plan we need to address. The other thing is, as event organisers, we like to have our finger in every pie. And often what happens when we haven't got a lot of buy-in through our business planning of everyone on the committee and our volunteer team, or they might be a paid staff, we then get a little bit frayed around the edges. The other thing I want you to think about with your business planning is into the future and what sort of lifestyle, not only financially, but how do we want to feel in 5 years' time? The problem with most business planning is that, or once they're written, they're really large documents, they sit on a shelf and no one reads them. Or even worse than sitting on a shelf, they end up in the bin. And I just wanted to really reiterate this because I've worked with a lot of groups who've done business plans, and then the next time or the next year you go back and work with them, they say, oh, what business plan was that? So before you start writing, make sure that your committee or your organising group doesn't suffer corporate amnesia. Is that you get everyone involved in the process. So from today, this presentation will be shared to you on PDF via Mackay Regional Council and Mackay Tourism, and we'll also have live links to different websites on this presentation. And the idea of that is to make sure you do the process that we're doing today with your whole group before either starting your business plan or updating it. Okay, so let's think positively. With business planning, there's basically 3 steps. And I break it into 3 steps. One is looking at where you've been, then about where you're going, where you want to be, and then the action plan of making it happen. Just try and keep it as simple as that. There is a template available where I've done the 1-page business plan or the strategic direction on a 1-page. And we'll run through these about where we've been, which is this column here, where we're going, into the middle, and then the last one, making it happen. I've also included an example. It's a made-up event of a chili festival, which I've always wanted to go to. I've never been to one. So please have a think about, this will give you the overview of where we've been, where we're going, and then making it happen. And this will give you, hopefully, when you're working through with your committees and you're organising groups, some of the wording to help you formulate this plan. Okay, let's kick off with where we've been. When we did the grant and also with sponsorship and what have you workshop, we looked at why you were created. And we don't have time today to write those down, but I want you to clearly think about why your event was created. And through this, I want you to actually write down why your event was created. The other thing to think about is, why does your event exist? So for example, with the Italian Festival, we were created because we had a lot of Italians in the community of Ingham, and we wanted to celebrate our Italian culture. The reason, and that's the whole idea and soul of why we were created. The reason we existed was also to attract visitors to our town, to try and increase visitor spend. And it was all about overnight visitor expenditure. So we had two reasons. Why we existed was to celebrate the Italian culture, and why we were created was Italian culture, and why we exist was to celebrate and bring visitors to our town for economic reasons. When you're looking at why you were created and having a look at where you've been, when you start your business plan, have a heading about the background of the event, about why you were created and why you exist, and then go into an event snapshot. In this event snapshot, you want to summarize your event, particularly, and I stress this, for someone who's never been before. The reason you want to write something like this and thinking about why for someone who's never been before, start thinking sponsors, grant providers, media, and potential visitors. So when you're writing the snapshot to put in the beginning of your business plan, it will also create a fantastic summary to use for future grant applications, sponsorship proposals, and marketing. The reason you want to put why you exist, why you were created, and your event snapshot, it gives someone who doesn't know your event very well a great background. And the other thing with your business plan, when you get new volunteers or new staff or committee members, it can become a great document to help with succession planning. Here's an example of another made-up festival called a medieval festival, and I've just written a snapshot here. So when you're writing an event snapshot, think about, like I said, your sponsors or someone who's never been before. Think of the what, where, and why. So in a few, like we've got about 5 paragraphs here, it clearly summarizes the event. So what year it was established, why it exists to put the town on the map and celebrate all things medieval. It also talks about how a visitor can become very involved in the event. So try your hand at Robin Hood crafts, have a go at archery, dress like a king.
Was that supposed to be a new screen up there?
Yes, medieval snapshot. Can you see it?
The screen is still the very first one.
Okay, what I'm going to do is go back and re-share the screen.
Yeah, because we didn't actually see the chili festival one either.
Oh,
No, that's right. Thanks, Chrissy.
I'll just stop the share, everyone, and then we'll go back to screen share. Okay, is that coming up now?
Yes.
Yeah. Why do you exist?
What I'm going to do is flick. So what did you see up to? Did you see up to the 3, this one?
That one. Yeah, that was the last one.
So quickly, there's a snapshot of the chili festival. Please don't hesitate, Chrissy, to get in straight away. So on the PDF you'll be sent, you'll get your one-page business plan, what that could look like, thinking about where we've been, looking at why you were created, looking at why you exist, and then the event summary. So is this showing up on your screen? The Medieval Festival
Yes,
Snapshot?
thank you. That's fine now.
Okay, thank you. So with this is about 5 paragraphs you again want to put near the beginning of your business plan and really give someone who doesn't know anything about your event. Also, never assume someone knows where your town or city or region is. So say, for instance, you'd write Medieval Town is located just a 1-hour flight or 90-minute drive from our capital city. We celebrate such an event due to our community's strong Celtic ties. So that's the reason of why you were created. And then I try and put in how many people you attract annually, what might be the economic impact, and how much publicity you create. And that summary will give you a great snapshot at the beginning of your business plan. Okay, the other thing, if you can, include one image, and when we did the marketing, we talked about this, one image that summarizes your event, and I would even put that in the business plan so that they're getting a really good overview. After you've done the background and the event snapshot, I then do what we call a competitive scan or even benchmarking. So when I talk about a competitive scan, it's a bit like doing a mystery shop about other like-minded events or events that you might aim towards. And I would set up a table and look at how you compare. So I do up a Word document with a table, and we'll put a summary of what's the date of our event, what's the pricing, how many sponsors we have maybe, how many people we get to it, how many followers we have on social media. And then we do a competitive scan, say with 3 or 4 other events, just to see how we are in the marketplace. How does the price of our event compare to others? Are we offering things for free that others aren't? It will really help you articulate very quickly how you're competing in the marketplace. If you've been running for quite some time, and particularly for larger events, we've even done benchmarking where we'll ring other events and ask them, would they like to benchmark with us? And we do ask quite confidential information like, would you mind sharing what your budget is? How much what's the percentage of your budget that you spend, for instance, on entertainment or hire equipment? Or how much do you spend on marketing? And we keep that information between the 3 to 10 events that we're benchmarking with and share it amongst each other. And the idea is that you can benchmark then to see how your budget or your expenditure is going compared to other events. Not all events obviously will share this information with you, but we try and find like-minded ones and share information. And the other reason we put the dates there is also to look at if our event is on when another large event is on in another region or a competing region. So hopefully that competitive scan at the beginning, because it's looking at where you've been, will help you articulate how you're going from an industry standard, and it'll help you formulate your planning into the future. The other thing to put when you're thinking about where you've been is really articulating that unique selling point. What makes you genuinely different? Not only what are you good at, but why are you different? And like we covered in marketing, you've got to be really aware of if you're using words like, oh, we're the biggest or we're the best. I'd probably sway not using those type of words. People in social media comments and ratings of your event, whether it be on TripAdvisor, Facebook or Instagram, your customers will say that. What you want to show through the business planning is what's your unique selling point, what makes you genuinely different. The reason you want to do that is if you've decided that part of your priorities are to develop your program into the future, you really want to develop your program around that theme of your event and what makes you genuinely different. Have a think, if you're struggling about articulating what's your unique selling point. What are you currently famous for, or what could you be famous for? If you can really get this down, would be fantastic to actually write it down in your business plan. You can say our unique selling point is this, or we are famous for, or we are aiming to be famous for this. And believe you me, it can often be something right under your nose. And often that will help you not only with your marketing, but in your business planning, really to, if that's your unique selling point, then maybe you need to allocate budget towards elevating that experience further. When we covered earlier in the sessions, for those who have been attending, remember at all times to write down in your business plan, only allocate a page to it, but what are some of the unique consumer trends addressing your event? And this one sorry, my screen's flicking, but we'll show you some of the consumer trends in this COVID period and that will be elevated. The other thing to be aware of in consumer trends, now this is not going to affect you unless you're a cycling event, but if you're a cycling event or a running event, being aware that those trends in the marketplace, particularly in Australia, are really increasing. So you want to highlight how your event is meeting consumer trends, and this will help you sell with future ticketing, obviously, but also with your sponsorship. So have a think about if you were a cycling event, just knowing that bicycle sales have exceeded car sales in the last decade in Australia. With running events, the participation by women and shorter runs are really important. So you need to identify that in your business plan so that you know what to look at in the future. So have a think about the consumer trends affecting your event now. Have a think about what could affect you in the future. This will also help you when you're doing your SWOT, your strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, or just even calling it challenges and opportunities. Again, this would be another page in your business plan to look at. When you're looking at where you've been, really look at how you're measuring your performance. And remember when we did the grant writing workshop, we talked about return on investment and looking at trends. So this is not about what you think personally is affecting your event. All too often, our plans and our business planning and event programs are affected by complaints and local community politics, or even our own politics internally. They're often determined by perception and not facts. So by doing and recording your trends, you can make sure that it's facts you're talking about. So for those who are new, in our grant workshop, we used this template to try and measure everything we can in an event, whether it's total attendance, publicity, how many performers or competitors we have, how many volunteers, stall holders, very importantly, what's income, expenditure, surplus or loss. You can record on an annual basis or financial year, however you record. If you are a long-term event, see if you can record your results over the last decade. And what you want to do is just write them down here for every year. If you're a monthly event, do it per month, whatever it might be. The things you can measure are also how many social media followers you have, how many website unique visits you have. And what you want to do, once you record these performances, I guess, is really look at how you can visually depict that in a business plan. So fill in your trends if you haven't done that format already. And I just want to quickly talk about calculating total attendance. So when you're in your business planning, looking at reporting total attendance, there's a real mix in the market of how we all report how many people go. So generally speaking, total attendance means everyone who visits the event, all your participants, and by that I mean your competitors, your stall holders, and often it's recorded on what's called daily aggregate. So if you're at a 3-day event and you're attracting 100 people a day, then your total attendance is 300. Some people are saying, oh, we had 100 individuals. Yes, that you would say you had 100 individuals attending your event, but our total attendance over the 3 days was 300. Often people say, oh, I went to that event, I'm sure there were only 5,000, but the local paper's reporting 15,000. That's because they're using an aggregated total attendance figure. So when you go back, I'll just quickly go back to that table. When you're recording total attendance, maybe break down what your daily average is and how that's calculated. Okay. If I'm rushing through any of this, it's just we've got a lot to get through in the next half hour. The other thing, of course, I'll push again and again, even if you're a free event, if you can have an online ticketing system, it really helps you with your calculation of attendance. Like I said, you want to start also recording your participants, and that's the number of musicians or competitors or artists or anyone you've got actually participating in the event. And if you're applying for funding, you will need to also articulate this. You also need to understand where your visitors are from. So I'd really highlight, if you're not already doing it, for your business planning process to get a visitor survey already organised. Here's a photo from the Serena Coconut Festival. They have done in the past really good visitor surveys, so they can tell exactly where people are from. When you're doing visitor surveys and also analysing all your trends, keep in the back of your mind, you need to compare apples to apples year in, year out. So the questions you're asking on your visitor survey need to be the same questions every year. You can add new questions at the end of that survey, but you want to be able to create graphs, and only you can create graphs by comparing the same information year out, year in, year out. The other thing to think about, particularly for larger events, are these new radio frequency identification, or we call them cashless payment systems. You might have seen them at some of the larger music events and things like rodeos. I wouldn't invest in this if you're a smaller event, but they're a great mechanism for recording how your event's performing. And what they do, you can use your armband to pay, you put money on it beforehand, and you can pay for things at the event. It also helps reduce risk with volunteers carrying cash across the site. And what's amazing is the stats you get at the end. They can tell you even down to where a person lives and how much soft drink they're consuming, what type of beer they're consuming, what merchandise they purchased. So it can tell you amazing things to help you understand where you've been as an event and start planning into the future. So thinking about, I'll just summarize again where you've been. Have a think about why you were created, writing that down, and why you exist today. Write an event snapshot. So a really quick snapshot about your event. Try and keep it from a perspective of someone who's never been before, and really think about putting together the statistics of your event performance. So when you're doing your business plan, you can go, okay, this is how we performed over the last 5 years, and this will help you determine where you want to go to in the future. So in step number 2 of your business plan, and I even will put this in the headings on my table of contents, I break, first of all, where we've been. Then second of all is your second chapter of where we're going. Where do you want to be in 5 years, and what are our priorities? So I'll just highlight there on the template that if you haven't already got it, that you can receive after today, is thinking about this area. So looking at where we've just been, which is part 1, is your snapshot. What sets you apart, that unique selling point, and really hone in on what makes you genuinely different. Think about who you are. Write down in your business plan what your corporate structure is. Like, are you an incorporated association? Are you a charity? Are you a company with non-profit objectives? Are you a sole trader? What is it that you are? Write that down in your business plan. The other hint about this, I even dedicate a whole page in my business plan into who we are, our corporate structure, who are the main people on our committee who hold positions. And I also list people like our accountants and our major sponsors and the details there, so that if I get hit by a bus tomorrow, it's kept in one document. I'll also put an attachment in the business plan for this section, and I call it Appendix 1, and put Dropbox links into all our corporate information, so that, like I said, if something happens or we lose our, I guess, intellectual property, it's all there in one go. The other thing to put in where you've been is looking at consumer trends, your competitive scan, and also challenges, your SWOT, and challenges and opportunities. This then highlights where you want to go. If you don't spend, I actually spend most of my time in the where we've been, and if I haven't got the information collated. And it might seem laborious now, but that information you can cut and paste into a lot of other applications into the future, not to mention it's great planning. So now we're going to look at where we're going. Thinking about the vision for your event, what are your objectives and what are your key priorities? I use a technique rather than saying to everyone in my group, oh, what's our vision? So unless you've got a background of, I guess, people with government experience or really strong corporate experience, which some of you do, I often say, what do you want to look like in 5 years' time? And I use the trick of thinking about, okay, imagine looking over the fence at your event. What does it look like now? What does it look like in 5 years' time? What does it look like in 10 years' time? It's a really easy technique to clearly articulate your vision. Another technique I'll use is often pretend we're in a helicopter. If we're looking down at our event, even if you're a corporate event or indoors, take the roof off your event, have a look at it now. Are you at capacity? The reason I try to do this is if we are at capacity, one of our key priorities may be a new location. Maybe we're looking at our event thinking, oh, we could get more people here, or, oh, I'm not sure we like this market. So that'll help you prioritize. I actually write down then with the greater group that I'm organizing with, what do we want to look like in 5 years? And importantly, what do we want to feel like in 5 years? If we're tired now and suffering burnout and don't have enough volunteers, and we want to project in 5 years more people coming to our event, how on earth are we going to do that if we're tired now? If that's the case, then a key priority for you is succession planning. And how do we get more people involved? And I'd start doing that through your business planning process now before you start attracting more people. So they go hand in hand. And I'm hoping by doing these, answering these two questions, it'll help you articulate what your priorities are for the future. The other thing to think about is experience development. So experience development might be, and many of us face this, our events are not profitable or they're not making enough surplus so that we can reinvest into the program next year. The worst thing I've been involved in, and I'm very guilty of this, we'll put on a free concert or something for free in an open air venue and everyone loves it and we get lots of people to it. But the issue is we haven't thought about next year, how are we going to afford a bigger and better act next year if we can't even break even in what we're currently doing. So I look at experience development as an opportunity to increase satisfaction from my visitors to the event and also for income diversification. So we look at what we call value add or experience enhancement. And I talk about this a lot. I've seen some events that might be free to go to, but they'll charge for parking, or they'll charge for shaded parking area or VIP passes. And the other thing that we've talked about a lot in our workshops is behind the scenes experiences and things that people may be willing to pay for extra. And I'll run through some of those in a minute. We talked in our last session about elevating what makes us distinctly different. So always keep that in the back of your mind when you're thinking of the future of your event. When you're thinking about writing, and I'll just, jump back to why were you created? I call it your event DNA or personality. What's the soul of your event? And make sure when you're looking at experience development, if that's a priority for your business planning, then think about what's the real soul of your event, and that will help you to develop experiences. The other thing always to keep in the back of your head, and you don't need to write this in your business plan, but to make sure when you're looking at experience development, how you're igniting your 5 senses. How do people see my event? How does it sound? How do they smell? How does it taste? How does it touch? And we touched on this in our last session, so keep that in mind when you're doing experience development. This is actually from the Sugar Shed, some of their tastes. So if you've got an event, make sure you're using local produce and elements there. So think about, when you're thinking about what could be the 5 priorities for our event, well, how could you elevate those 5 experiences, and make sure you write that down in your business planning. Okay, so on the last stage of our business plan, we want to think about making it happen. And I'll just cross-reference this. So when we're looking at making it happen, when we've worked out our priorities, and I'll cover that in a minute, most of them relate to either people and human resources and financials, so money. And when I talk money, it doesn't just have to be cash. We can talk about a lot of in-kind support, and that's how a lot of us survive in events. The other thing to be really aware of, and you guys know this better than anyone, is in this period of COVID, risk management's going to become more important for us. And I don't want to just talk about COVID. It could be cyclones, it could be flooding, it could be fire, whatever it is. We really need to address risk management for a priority over the next 12 months, and particularly hopefully updating or developing your business plan from here. When we talk about human resourcing, I've never been to this event. I don't know these gents, but I saw this picture quite a few years ago about the Great Australian Beer Festival. And I thought, those are some lads who really love their event. What you want to make sure is, if you're suffering from depleted volunteerism at your event or participants, you need to understand your event DNA and why people go to your event and why they love it. And then you've got to find those people to help you become either committee members or volunteers at your event. It's no use just putting an ad out on Facebook or the paper saying calling for volunteers. You need to find like-minded people who have the same passion, the same crazy drive that you do for your event. Those people may not necessarily live in your town or your region, so you've just got to find them with a common purpose. When we're thinking human resources, this is an old technique that I've shared before in our business planning. If you're thinking about your business plan, put your current structure in your business plan, but also think about what's the future structure. So if one of your priorities is to project growth or expansion, have a think about what are the new positions that you're going to need to put in your human resourcing structure or your organizational structure of your event. A technique I use is to put out a site map This is for an outdoor event, but you might have, like I said, a small conference or market, whatever it is. Try and get a map of your event and actually get people to take a photo of themselves, and in your committee meetings, put where they're currently looking after or what parts they're currently looking after, and then put what areas are missing, and have a think about the personality of the people involved in your group. I used some quite famous people a few years back on this one. So you want someone at the entry or the welcome to your event who's very friendly, very attractive if you've got a George Clooney, but you want someone who's going to have that PR skill at the beginning. You may not want yourself as the organizer who's really stressed with a chook with their head cut off on the day to be near the welcoming part of your event. You may find that you want someone who's really diplomatic to be near the end of your event or at the entrance, who can help put out the little bushfires that happen at an event. So you want to try and find a diplomat for that. And if you're struggling attracting young people to your event and you have an element of your event that you'd like developed, have someone young, enthusiastic, maybe not as crazy as this guy, but Corey, have a think about, I've seen like at Woodford Folk Festival, they really struggled about 15 years ago. They noticed a lot of their people attending were the same people, which is great, but the 18 to 25-year-olds were starting to fall off, and they looked at their program and thought, we don't even know what type of music they like. So they actually took a risk. They allocated part of the land of the event and got a young person to come in and actually run that section. And their networks helped attract younger people. And they were able to attract a network of performers and artists that the current organising committee wasn't able to do. So the idea of this process is very important for your business planning and understanding what's your organisational structure, what areas you need for human resourcing, and how you move into that future. When we're looking at those trends, so thinking back at that screen I showed previously, hopefully you were able to see it, about recording your income and expenditure. Many of us are not great at reading profit and loss documents, and it's really hard to make logical decisions when we're all emotive and wanting more money spent. I, for instance, like marketing and promotion, so I'll push in a committee meeting to spend more on marketing and promotion. Now, what the hell would I know about the business if I haven't seen what the income and expenditure is and how much proportionate is currently being spent on marketing? So you really need to work with your group to bring them all online. And a really simple way to do this is through pie graphs. This is just a made up event, looking at how they spend their income and expenditure. If you can do this, then it'll really help you understand where your profit lines are. And if you overlay this with your annual expenditure and profit or surplus and deficit over time, it'll help you understand what your priorities for your income are. It'll really help you understand too, for instance, I saw this where they were selling the merchandise at an event for a certain amount, which, say for this one, was they were getting an income of 23% and it was actually costing them 18%. And when they worked out how much time and people power they were spending on it, it just wasn't a viable option. Others I've seen do very well. The other thing, and you've heard me talk about this before if you've been to a workshop, is understanding your income and really understanding if you're grant addicted. I got this word from my uncle many years ago, and he said, most of our events have grant and sponsorship addiction, and it's dangerous because if that grant disappears next year, suddenly our income disappears. And we all know that we can't keep getting funded year in, year out by the same people. And the same thing, I've seen one event where their naming sponsor was over 50% of their income. And it wasn't until they went through this process and put it in a pie graph, they went, ooh, that's risky. And you've seen in the tourism industry, when we have businesses who rely, for instance, on a Chinese market for the majority of their income, things that we can't control, the external threats, mean that they've gone bankrupt or are likely to go bankrupt in the next short time because they haven't diversified enough. Anyway, so just quickly thinking about your financial review, that's how you could look at it. Here's a graph about putting it on a line graph over time with your income and expenditure. This is a really simple technique, and it'll show you over time with maybe your total revenue or income, how it's going, how it goes also with your expenditure. Over time, I would then overlay that with my attendance, and hopefully the more I'm spending, the greater my attendance goes up as well. But I have, through this process, seen times when our expenditure keeps going up and then our attendance was going like this. So we quickly realized, oops, what we're offering people or spending money on is really not working. So you need to understand that. This is from Uncle Bill, the best advice I've ever been given when you're looking at financial planning with your business planning. He said to me, for long-time financial sustainability, your event needs to generate income from attendance. And I kind of looked at him and I thought, well, what do you mean? Because I came from a background of let's get as much sponsorship and grant funding as we possibly can, and that'll keep us going for the next year. And he said, mate, you're just thinking too short term here. What happens when that sponsor pulls out or you do something they don't like or they go broke? You're not meeting. He said, if you can put on an event that's attracting people and people are willing to either give their time to it and or pay money to attend it, then it keeps you honest. And I'm like, I'm honest? And he goes, no, it keeps you honest to your event. It means that you're giving a show or you're putting on an event or a festival that people are willing to give up their time and pay for, and you're innovating every year with your event experience to make sure they keep coming back and keep bringing another friend every year. And he said, that's the best way to safeguard you financially into the future. He said, you need to generate income from attendance. And I always keep that in the back of my mind now. It was the best advice I've ever been given. Some other financial strategies just to be aware of. Don't just think about increasing visitor numbers. Because remember, for many of us who do outdoor events, more visitors means more toilets. And I've seen some events where we spend so much on hire equipment that there becomes a point that we're better off capping numbers, because by the time we spend all this extra money on hire equipment, it's not viable, or we'd have to charge our customers too much money. The other thing to think about is, how do you increase length of stay at your event? Now, the reason you want to increase length of stay is to try and get everyone to spend as much money as possible per person on site. It's the old shopping mall or shopping centre syndrome. There's a reason there's music playing at shopping centres. If you have a listen next time you're into Coles, they've targeted in our region, because they know most of us are Generation X, and they're now playing Generation X music. So when I'm in Coles, I hear things like The Cure and some really groovy music. And I've noticed my spending has gone up because I'm enjoying myself more on site. So think about when you're developing your event, and this again goes back to what are your priorities into the future to write down into your business plan. What are the things that you need to do to get people to spend more? From a regional perspective, And why we want to do is attract not only day trippers to our event, we want them to stay overnight. So that, and we call it in tourism overnight visitor expenditure, OVE. We want to increase spend per visitor and get them to stay longer so that they come back to our event the next day if you're a multi-day event. And it also really helps our region and the greater economic impact when we're trying to get sponsorship and partners. If you could show that your event generates 2 overnight visitor stays per person, and those people are spending in accommodation, service stations, hot bread shops, whatever it is, you can attract more partners and also attract more funding. The other thing is packaging. When I talk about packaging, it's not just about packaging with accommodation. How are you packaging within the event, and what are you doing to increase spend within your event? We are getting close to time now, so have a think about, I've just thrown up some examples previously from the Mount Isa Rodeo. They started developing experiences that didn't cost them more money to put on. So one was a shoot tour, where you take people somewhere in the event that they can't normally go to. Or you might do a breakfast or lunch with your competitors or your performers, whatever it might be. We also then partnered with accommodation and tours that is already packaged. So we don't have to get into the structure of the package. We say, what accommodation and tour packages have you got? Can you include our festival ticket into that? And then you ask them to sell it, or you link to their online ticketing and can sell it that way. These value adds have been incredible ways for us as an event at Mount Isa Rodeo to increase profit so that we can keep the ticket price on the gate the same when we went through hardships in that community. Just a quick one on free events. This is an old example, but a beauty. Over in the States, in Washington, DC, they have an event called the National Cherry Blossom Festival. They have a huge street parade that attracts over 100,000 people. But how do they make money out of a free event? Well, they set up special VIP reserved seats. I know Carnival of Flowers does this in Toowoomba as well, and they sell tickets and pre-package to coach companies and to corporates. The other thing you want to do is help people join the dots about when they get there so that you can increase people's spend. So I've put some links there about Mackay Tourism and some of the existing information that you can do to help people get to your event. Where do they stay and increasing length of stay? The other priority you'll need to think about when you're looking at your business planning is some of the government guidelines coming out about COVID. Be aware, we all want to have the guide, the COVID safe guide for events. It's not out yet, but here's some links that we'll keep on the PDF for the Australian government. Also the latest, if you came to the workshop on Tuesday, we talked about some of the events and mass gathering questions being asked. So for Queensland, covid19.qld.gov.au has got some great updated information and frequently asked questions. So I've put the link in there. Be aware that further information on COVID's safe planning for events is not available right now, but it will be soon, hopefully. If you're worried about COVID cleaning practices, QTIC, the Queensland Tourism Industry Council, has released a program that's free to participate in, and there's also COVID safe business guidelines. We talked about on Tuesday also one event that has been able to operate throughout this period in most states have been farmers markets. So they've already experienced a lot of these things. I'd go and ask them or go to those markets and see how they're coping with it. And just, I think in the last few days, if you're looking at work, health and safety plans, and what I do is attach these plans to my business plan, in my operations plan, my risk and healthy, and my marketing plan is also attached to the business plan. And there's some great safe, COVID safe checklists. There's just links there. I won't go through them now. So quickly looking at this, we've covered off where you've been. We've looked at where you're going. So where do you want to be in 5 years' time? Even think longer if you can. Where do you want to be in 10 years' time? I've even seen one event do a 100-year plan. What are the objectives you want to achieve, beginning with the end in mind? And then once you've done that, and once you've looked at your performance, your snapshot, and some of your trends, that will then hopefully help you identify what are the key priorities that you need to do in your business planning process for the next 5 years going forward. It's really hard, I'll reiterate, to do and identify priorities if you haven't already looked at your consumer trends and if you haven't looked at your performance over time. If you're a new event, just think about what are your objectives and targets and work out your priorities from there. Me, I'm pretty simple. I can't think much more than top 5 priorities. I've seen some events. I've seen one, a music event, come up with their top 10. So think about what are the priorities. And again, they can't just be your priorities as an individual, unless you're a one-man woman or man running the event. If you've got a group of you, including your volunteers, try and get them involved in those priorities. Just Chrissy and Lasara, I'll be finished in about 5 minutes, so we can open up for questions then. And I'll just quickly wanted to finish this area. I have written down some examples of priorities, not for you necessarily will be to copy from to be the same, but they're the priorities that we have at the moment for an event we're working on. One is partnerships, to look at how we can do more community outsourcing. One that we normally don't have on our priority list has been risk management. We've elevated that into our priorities because of the times we're looking at. And please don't just do it for COVID. Think about what you face in the regions you're working in. Think about what are the other risks that have hit you over the last few years and what could in the future, like for weather, flooding, cyclones, whatever they might be. Even drought can be a serious scenario to think about for risk management. The other one that we always face with is this long-term financial sustainability, and how do we create more income streams for our event so that we don't become grant addicted. The other thing we really want to focus on is increasing yield. So how do we get, if you get 100 people coming to your event, if they each spent an extra $10 each at your event, what does that look like over time? Because that's what we want to do. And we want them not just to spend for the sake of spending. We want them to spend on our event because they love it so much, because they're having such a great time and they come back. And the other thing we always struggle with in the one event, particularly I work with, is the human resourcing. So how can we do succession planning through this process? How can we think about in 5 years' time, what do we want to look like? Okay, so the other thing to think about, once you've done your one-page business plan, is think about that action plan and how you're going to do that. So there's a bit of a template for that. So just remembering what we've talked very quickly, this normally is a 3-hour workshop, so we've really just done the high line today. The 3 steps, just in summary: where have you been? Where are we going? How do we make it happen? Why were we created? What's the snapshot of our event? What makes us genuinely different? Who are we? What is our corporate information? What are the consumer trends, challenges, and opportunities? And how have we performed over time with that? What's our vision, or where do we want to be in 5 years' time? What are the key objectives? Or try and think, what are the key outcomes we want this year, next year, or in 5 years' time? Then work out what are your top priorities to achieve those. The making it happen becomes an action plan and working out and actually writing it down. When you are doing a workshop with your organising group, you can actually knock this process if you've got the information, particularly your trends information in summary. If you've got all that information, you could actually knock over a business plan in 3 hours. Maybe not the fine writing of it all, but it's not a difficult process as long as you've got a few brains and heads working together. Alrighty, the other thing I always try and do is put my business plan on the back of my business card and really summarize it, get everyone thinking the same. We exist to do this. In 5 years' time, we want to be famous for, and here are our 5 top priorities or actions we need to do. If you can get it as simple as possible like that, everyone hopefully will remember your business plan and it won't end up in a rubbish tip. If you're like me, I've even put it on a label with our committee and said at the end of the year or after our event, if we've achieved this, we can break open our champagne or red wine and celebrate it. So thank you, everyone. What I'm going to do now is get everyone, including Chrissy and Lasara, to turn on your videos. Please turn on your mics and let's start asking questions. And thank you again. I know you've heard it before, but thank you to Mackay Tourism, the Mackay Regional Council and Local Buying Foundation. I'm going to stop the screen now so that we can see everyone's faces.
First of all, Krista, I'd just like to say, I could watch that business plan one like at least once every 6 months just to remind me to update it, because it really is like simple. It's a simple procedure. I just love the way you present that. Just breaks it down and it makes it achievable. It doesn't seem like, you know, it's going to be such a big hard monster to attack. So yeah, I've done that process and I'd recommend anybody else to do that process because it's really it's achievable. It's achievable.
Cool.
Is anybody having problems actually doing their business plan and they'd like a bit of help from one of our mentors? You can have a one-on-one session with them as part of our funding.
And it's free.
Yeah, it's free. Thank you to Mackay Regional Council and Local Buying Foundation.
Chrissy, it's Glenys Mansfield calling from the Isaac Council with the St. Lawrence Wetlands Weekend. I am just looking at a little bit extra things doing there for that for next year, so I would love some mentoring on it.
Excellent. We're going to have a little conversation after this session, so we'll allocate you. We'll put you in contact with Krista or Stu, and we can get that organised ASAP for you.
Thank you.
No worries at all. It's that easy, everybody.
I'm just noticing some of the comments here. A lot of people had trouble viewing the screen, so I do hope when we went out and came in again, it came back on.
Yeah, that was when I didn't see the Chili Festival. Then all of a sudden I went, oh, but the screen hasn't changed. So yeah, we got that fixed up straight back then. The other thing is, if anybody would like to give us a testimonial, we've had some fantastic, just comments in emails and that, but if you could send us some testimonials, that'd be great. Like, it always helps us when we're, you know, want to fund another series like this or whatever. So if you'd like to pop something in an email, that'd be fabulous too. And I just might like let everybody know this is the weekend of my Mackay Marina run, so I'm a little bit sad today because I just love my event. It's our event. It's actually my most favourite weekend of the year. So. Did you see that post I put up on it, Krista? I'll give you a little example of how you can get some, if you're all members on this is for Mackay Marina Run. I just popped up a post of an empty it was a empty, I suppose, run shoot. No one was in it. All we had was the sponsors' flags, and just said to everybody, you know, like, we're a little bit sad it's not on this year. Share your experiences, and it's just gone ballistic. We've got people putting up lovely photos. We've got people saying...
Is it on your, sorry, Chrissy, is it on your Facebook page?
Yeah, it's on the Mackay Marina Run Facebook.
If anyone wants to have a look, now's the time to grab your phone, on silent, of course.
Yeah, just have a look on that, and it just gives you an example of because what we're doing, we're actually doing a plan for the next 6 months before our registration start on keeping our audience engaged. And so I'll sort of have scheduled things and things as we go, but like it's just an empty run shoot. And so far, we've got 3,500 people it's reached, and like 67 comments, and that was sort of, there's no boosting or anything. That was just sort of without trying, really. And then I'll do another one on Sunday for the actual day. And I've alerted running groups and that I want them to all put their pictures up and put pictures of the course and that sort of thing. So we were talking about that the other day, about keeping your audience engaged when your event isn't actually on.
Fantastic.
And then I sent an email out to all our sponsors today asking them for just a little comment on, like, a community sort of comment, and I'll put those on over the next 2 weeks so our sponsors are sort of engaged around that time. But I sent them all an email today just saying thank you. We actually ended up in Runner's World magazine as a run of the month, even though we've cancelled it, which was a whole full page spread. So we put that in as well. So anyway, just a couple of hints.
Awesome. I think everyone's zoomed out. You've got no questions?
Or even experiences that they want to share with anyone that could be relevant and interesting.
Mr. I had a quick question. Stu here. That was awesome. You mentioned you knew an event that had they wrote 100-year business plan. Who was that, and why were they going out that far?
It's Woodford Folk Festival.
Right.
Now, there's no document of a big 100-year business plan. What the event, and it really, again, opened my headspace up to a place I'd never thought of. And I looked at them and thought, oh, these hippies, oh my gosh, what are they on? When I sat around with them and they shared their thoughts, they said that their site it's basically on a open field, and they purchased the land with the help of their council. And what they've realised that one of their priorities, they struggle every year. They're basically building a city for 75,000 plus people every year. So their natural instinct, like all of us, we better get some funding to build the toilets, and start building stuff. And they even thought, we should, build wooden tree houses, and we can rent them out during the year for accommodation as an income stream, yada, yada, yada. Then they realised, after building one toilet block, in outdoor open elements, how quickly it ages. And when they've talked to their customers throughout each event, they said, what do you love the most? And they loved the character and atmosphere that they don't use the word makeshift, but bringing artists in to create these displays every year, and how it's new every year. And they said and a big thing of their event is that it's innovative, using the latest sustainable trends, yada, yada. So if they build stuff, it'll look old, it'll age, yada, yada. And so they realized, thinking into 100 years ahead, and I used to think that was crazy, but now, after I've hit the half century, it suddenly dawned on me, 30 years goes real quick. So for an event, if you're long lasting, maybe start thinking like that. I'm not saying rebuild like Woodford does every year. And it's really helped them with their sustainability, and not just reacting to consumer trends like that, but reacting consciously to what their customers want, but not just putting on, for instance, when rap music was really big in the late 80s, not putting rap, because that's not what their event's about, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
It is fascinating. And
Yeah,
they
really
said,
interesting.
they said straight away, if you put the cover of what will it look like in 5 years, what does it look like in 10, 50, 100, it helps with their decision making.
Yeah, really interesting.
Krista, you were also talking about itineraries and information, local information. Mackay Tourism has an events toolkit, and on the events toolkit is links to itineraries, you know, what you can do in the region. So everybody can just grab those links, that information, and put it on their own websites. And especially with what's happening with COVID at the moment, we're developing new itineraries. So they'll keep coming out, you know, for this period anyway. So, you know, some nice new updated ones if you've got other ones on there. So, Sarah, when we send that email out, we might put in a link to the event toolkit and any new itineraries in that we've got coming out.
Yep, I've put it in the comment section below as well.
Okay. You're so clever.
So yeah, we haven't talked much about the toolkit that Mackay Tourism has. It's a really good toolkit. So it's even got hints, I think, on media and packaging. I really like it.
And plus Mackay Regional Council also. Do you want to talk about Mackay Regional Council's events?
Page?
Yeah.
Yep. We also actually link to Mackay Tourism's toolkit as well. So we have a page called Organising Events in the Mackay region. No, it's a bit of a mouthful, but it's just sort of your one-stop shop to find out all the information you need to do to host an event here. So finding an event space, all of your permitting links and requirements in there, links to different templates as well that the Queensland government have provided. So there's things in there like risk management plan templates, marketing templates. We've obviously got links in there to grants and sponsorship and promoting your event. So don't forget to promote on the ATDW, which goes through to Mackay Tourism, but also on council's What's on Calendar. And then we can start listing things like the events workshop. So these kind of series on that page as well. I'll make sure I put the link for that in the email as well.
Awesome.
Just a little spruik since everyone's being quiet for the Serena Sugar Shed. As we mentioned before, Ian's the new coordinator out there. They'll be opening next week, I believe. And I'm sure Ian would be keen to work with you all if you're looking for tours or other activities to try and encourage extended length of stay. Ian is your contact.
And also product for if they need some local product at events or markets or whatever, if people are holding those.
Yeah, that would be great.
And we've used them as gifts also. I'll give them a big plug as gift packs for Queensland produce. We often send to media to thank them for covering our events or something like that. So it's pretty yummy as well.
I use them for when we have presenters and that up as well. We had Greg, you.
That's how I found out about it, because Mackay Regional Tourism, throughout presenting over the years with you guys, they've given some thank you gifts that have included local products. And as a follow-up, we've then supported those local businesses. So it's a great, I hate going somewhere, and not that I don't like being given a thank you gift, but it'll have stuff from another state or overseas, and it's just not the same.
Yeah, no, I love giving local products, and yeah, like you said, you just never know where it leads, Sam.
Awesome.
To help your local producers. Well, if nobody's got anything to say, Kirsty, did you have anything to say at the end of this?
No, it was a great workshop, Krista. Well done. And yeah, just to support the comment that Chrissy had mentioned about the importance of testimonials. from participants, because as a funding organisation, we certainly do look at what that means, and it provides some ground truthing and some evidence that it's needed and supported by the community. So definitely get them through if you can, and yeah, well done to all involved.
Thank you so much, and thank you again.
There is one question in the comments from Margie about the Festival of Arts. Amber or Leah, did one of you want to speak to the festival?
What was the question, sorry?
It just said, is Mackay Festivals happening this year?
No, Margie, we made an official announcement a couple of weeks ago that the Festival of Arts and Wine and Food Day, which is part of that, is not happening at all this year.
Oh, yeah, right. Sad, hey?
It is very sad. But we're hopefully working on something that we might be able to deliver in August.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, because I was thinking, we've been talking about linking events in the trail. So I was just thinking of that for Reef Festival, because what's the dates usually? It's the... For
Festival of Arts?
Yeah.
July. So we normally run for 10 days. This year would have started around the 16th, 17th, I think.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that would be the Reef Festival, because that's like the 31st or the 30th to the 2nd. So yeah, we, maybe next year, whatever. But yeah, look at that sort of trail of
does that happen up in Airlie?
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. That would be awesome. We have a program that we're trying to sort of build up called a Fringe Events program. So it's basically like the idea of Adelaide Fringe, where any event in the Mackay region and Airlie Beach we definitely consider as well. Yeah, basically like Adelaide Fringe, anyone can apply, and it's basically like a marketing campaign. We basically bounce off each other and help each other
definitely
market the events.
Yep. Fabulous.
We've got some cool ones happening in the Isaac region as well. They've got some fabulous events, as Kirsty and Glenys will tell us. So I think this is why this ongoing conversation that we can keep up will be really, really important. So I might just pick out, Lasara, we might organise when we have a chat after, just to pick out some dates, like a monthly date. And I think we'll have a nice little monthly date, everybody. And we'll keep it around the lunchtime time. It seems to work for everybody, and we'll just make this ongoing, and things like that can just we can create them and grow them. Love it.
Excellent.
Well, Ian's just published all the details of when they're open on the chat room, so if you can have a look at the group chat of when it reopens and the hours.
Okay, well, Krista and Stu, did you want to say anything at the end of this, at the end of this session before I wrap it all up?
I'd just like to say thank you so much for the opportunity, also for myself. I'll share, I think I've already shared this with everyone. I'll never forget the day Lasara called me. It was just after all the cancellations of events, and I was pretty feeling low. And so this has been also a great uplift for me, and I love hearing just then about events across from Airlie Beach to Mackay, thinking about trails and how they can work with each other. That's what this is all about. So awesome.
Yeah.
And I can't thank, I've said it again, to Local Buying Foundation, Mackay Regional Council, and Chrissy, to you and the team at Mackay Tourism. Thanks.
Thanks so much. Stu, would you like to say something? Is Stu still there?
Yeah, pretty much exactly what Krista said. It personally, it meant an awful lot to have the council and Mackay Tourism reach out at the time that they did, because it was pretty, much like Krista, pretty dire time. So personally, I'd just like to thank the Local Buying Foundation as well. And it was funny on a micro level. It reminded me of why it's really important to keep reaching out in times where there's opportunities, no matter how dire the situation. And it applied to me as an individual, but I think that can also apply to organisations and communities more broadly. So I think Mackay Tourism and Regional Council sort of set the tone by teaching me a lesson to start with before I sort of imparted anything I knew to anyone. So thank you very much.
All right then, but I'd like to thank both Krista and Stu, where we're sort of lucky in a way, because, you know, like your expertise is for us to be able to, you know, like get a hold of that. This whole Zoom thing is like, I actually prefer to be person to person, but this just makes it so, I suppose, manageable to be able to spread the word further than, you know, just like when you come to Mackay and it's hard for people from Isaac and that, or Central Highlands or Whitsunday to get there. So, you know, this is definitely something that we need to look at for the future as well. But we do want face-to-face. I do really like talking to people face-to-face as well. So, yeah, again, thank you, Local Buying Foundation, Mackay Regional Council. However, I'd really, really love to thank everybody who's participated, because if we didn't have all you, then it wouldn't have been much use of the rest of us just being on these Zooms. So thank you for taking so much of your time to do this, because we really did pack a fair bit in 4 weeks, but that's how we meant to do it. Like I said, an 8-week challenge is just a bit long, I think. So, yeah, thank you, everybody. Have a lovely weekend. If you go for a run this weekend, can you post it on my Mackay Marina Run Facebook page, please? We're really, and a nice photo of some part of the region so that we can promote it out to everybody who needs to visit here. My parting words. Lasara, would you like to say anything from the... Okay.
No, I concur from what everyone else said.
I'd just like to say to my partner in crime here, Lasara, she's just been amazing. Like, she's so good at her tech and everything else that she does. So we really do enjoy working together, Lasara and I.
We do. Thanks to you too, Chrissy.
Okay, thanks.
See you later, everyone.
Bye.
Yeah.